You ever have one of those moments where you open up a book, maybe a sacred text, maybe a special piece of literature that has mattered in your life? You read it sort of absent-mindedly, and then you realize it's actually speaking through the years right to you. Well, there's a beautiful text in the 3rd chapter of the book of Berachot in the Talmud, which talks about the obligations that a person has when they're in a moment of loss and mourning. And then, beyond them, their community, what obligation does a comforter have when people are experiencing loss or trauma? And the Talmud actually includes an older version, the Mishnah, and says that when you are obligated, meit mutal lefanecha, this is the 3rd chapter of the book of Berachot, when a dead person that you are obligated to take care of is right in front of you, there are things you are obligated to do and things that you are not obligated to do. In fact, when the person has just died, you are called an onain, which means that you're neither here nor there. You're not obligated to any system of command, of mitzvot, including the Shema, right, which is a biblical injunction that you're supposed to recite in a time-bound way. So if you are obligated to take care of the dead, even that biblical mandate to read the Shema, you're exempt from. But what if you're a comforter? What if you are there to accompany people as they mourn? And the challenge of that is an incredibly important one, because what if you are obligated to help someone, and therefore you are exempt from doing something else? But what if you're not exactly obligated, but your heart is connected to those who are in mourning? The Gemara talks about 2 kinds of comforters, based on the rows that people would stand in when the mourners themselves would pass between 2 columns. So imagine that the people who are in mourning are walking this way. Immediately to their right and to their left are 2 lines of people who offer ancient words of comfort. We still do this to this day in traditional Jewish funerals. But the short distance that they have to traverse from the grave itself back to the public sphere, as they begin to reconnect to life through Shiva, through a gradual process of mourning, there are 2 lines that are immediately visible, are physically proximate to the mourners themselves, and they are also, based on this text, exempt from other mitzvot. They are pnimiim. They are internal to the experience. But what if you have the 2 columns? You also have those who are not standing immediately there. How are they obligated to mitzvot? The middle lines, the ones who are most close to the mourners, have clear obligations, meaning they're exempt from all other mitzvot, because their primary role is to begin the healing, is to help others. But the people who are the chitzonim, the people who are on the outside columns of comforters, the text actually says they're obligated to say the Shema, to learn Torah, to pray. The healing that the chitzonim offer is no less important for the mourners. But the chitzoniyim, those external, the second row of comforters, if you could use that language, the people who are somewhat outside of the experience, their role is to maintain the system of sanctity such that the mourners themselves and the first column of comforters have a sacred world to return to when the healing continues. So we're never actually not connected to the experience. But these ritualized methods of comforting are very, very helpful. Ritual holds us when the world makes no sense. It helps us remember that our role, no matter where we find ourselves, is connected. There are people who go through trauma themselves, and mourning and loss. There are people who are immediately located. The Gemara starts with this phrase, meit mutal lefanav, the dead person, which for us symbolizes the trauma we need to tend to, our obligation to take care of each other when we die, and I would say by extension when we suffer. There is that immediate experience. Then you have the first row, first responders to trauma. And the sacred responses leave every other obligation you have behind so that you can heal. You can be fully present. You don't have to say the Shema. You have to be a comforter. That's your job. And then you've got other rows of comforters who are present but in a different way. They are present because they maintain and perpetuate the sacred structures, because that's what holds us all when everything's fine and when things are not fine. What I wish for all of us is to see the language of the Book of Blessings, of Masechet Berachot, as a guide. You can't be all things at all time. And sometimes the mourning that you are going through is so geographically defined. It's proximate. It's right in front of you. That is the totality of my experience right now. Thank God for you in this moment that you are never alone. There are first responders, sacred responders. In fact, you yourself, if you are not immediately immobilized by your own trauma, you're called to be a sacred comforter. And then you should know when you are in the act of sacred comforting, which can weigh on you, that you're not alone either, because you are a pnimi, you are right there, fully present, defined by this loss, by this experience. There are chitzoniim, there are people who are holding you. There is the trauma, there are the pnimiim who hold those right there, and there are the chitzoniim, those just a little bit further away, who are holding those who hold you. And ultimately, tradition teaches us that God is holding us all while we hold each other.